The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Here we go again, starting with another block of episodes as we march towards episode 200 of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. Thank you all so much. Obviously, as you saw last week, we hit episode 150 with our awesome interview with Ryan Sens with Funky Buddha, one of the largest brewers in the state of Florida. And now we are going to completely flip the script and go to people that are so small, they're still brewing at home. Home brewers. We're going to be chatting with some home brewers and talking about home brewing and all sorts of other fun stuff. And we're going to be doing it, or actually we did it, shall we say, at Riverside Market South. Back in June, they were the host of the SFL Hops Beer Fest in 2023. If you've never heard of SFL Hops, they are an organization based here in South Florida, obviously, that basically promotes beers, does reviews, does meetups, things of that nature. They also host a yearly festival, which happens to be one of the largest home brewing competitions in the area. And so they were gracious enough to let us come. We brought our equipment, and what you're going to be hearing today is a lot of interviews from people who connect with home brewers and a lot of home brewers themselves about the nature of home brewing, what got them started, the ease of finding ingredients and other things, because hops don't really grow on trees here in Florida. First of all, they grow on vines, and I'm fully aware of that. And second of all, this isn't exactly the hop climate. University of Florida is changing that, and hopefully we can talk to them sometime soon. But as an aside, I understand. We will also talk about, hey, do you want to open? Is that something that you're interested in? What does that future vision look like? But I think if we're going to talk about an event hosted by SFL Hops, we need to talk to them specifically. And so the first interview that we're going to have is with Stuart Skopit. He is the founder of the organization. With today's interviews, just so you are aware, they were not recorded in the order that you're going to be hearing them, so there may be a little bit of time difference. Don't worry, we're not going back. This is not an alternate universe sort of a situation. This is just, we're going to be having some chats. It was also kind of rainy that day, so if you hear some rain in the background, it happens. You know, podcasting is not an exacting science, and I'm not going to get a nice big studio like some other people. I'm going to be out there in the field for you. So we're going to be chatting with Stuart Skopit from SFL Hops to understand the organization and the festival. And then, awesomely enough, great friend of the program, Albert Rivera. You've heard him before because he kind of has his own business, Bread and Beer Buds. And if you've been to North Miami Brew Fest, you will have been to the Bread and Beer Buds tent, because he also runs the fermentation lab at Florida International University's Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, who are, of course, the people that run the North Miami Brew Fest. I did not expect to see him there that day, but he was there. And of course, he was gracious enough to talk to us about home brewing and the role that education can play in that, and how some home brewers are now starting to really seek out that education. So to recap, this first section is going to be Stuart Skopit from SFL Hops, our lovely and gracious hosts for the SFL Brewfest in 2023, and then Albert Rivera from Bread and Beer Buds and the Fermentation Lab at Florida International University. Absolutely. Okay, so I guess name and organization.
Stuart Skopit, SFL Hops.
Can you give us a little bit of the background of the mission behind SFL Hops as we get rained on?
Well, It was basically something to bring people together, people who are like-minded into craft beer, and to come up with different kinds of events related to beer, whether it's brewery crawls, festivals, happy hours, food and beer pairings, any of those things.
And other than the copious amounts of rain, how has today's event been for you?
As you said, other than the copious amounts of rain, it's been terrific. I think, it was blazing hot at the beginning, so in some ways maybe it was a welcome to have a little bit of rain, but the fun people are here.
Awesome. How would you kind of describe the state of home brewing here in South Florida?
It's definitely growing, because the last time we did a homebrew competition was 2 years ago, and the majority of the homebrewers weren't around or weren't brewing anymore, and yet we ended up getting 15 homebrewers, one of the biggest homebrew events in South Florida. So I think that speaks volumes to how big home brewing is down here in South Florida.
Have you seen a lot of trends in home brewing that maybe the craft, like the professional industry, is sort of ignoring or not really focusing on?
I think sometimes when they're competing in a contest, they might be a little more willing to be creative with the beers that they're making or their styles that they're making. And that's not to say that professional breweries aren't, but the home brewers sometimes are looking for something to stand out. And that's kind of the fun of coming to these events.
It's kind of amazing. Do you think that a lot of this will sort of indicate what the future of professional brewing, what distribution and tap rooms are going to have in the near future?
I think definitely, because, we've got 15 homebrewers here today, and I would say a good portion of them are going to end up making the step forward at some point to open up their own brewery. We even have Rocketeer beer here today, and they won our homebrew competition a couple years ago. And now they're here today representing as an actual professional brewery. So I think that's really what these kind of festivals are all about.
That's kind of amazing. So you'll be doing this on a hopefully more regular basis? Fingers crossed?
As far as festival, it will be at least a year. We used to do maybe 1 or 2 events a month with crawls and things, but I've kind of pulled that back. If there's going to be another festival, it'll be a year from now.
Awesome. In terms of the craft beer industry in South Florida as well, because it's exploded in recent years between Broward, where we are, in Miami-Dade and Palm Beach County and so on, is it starting to get even bigger, or are you starting to see things get to a sort of a normal stasis? This is kind of where the field is going to be and where we're going to be for a little while.
There's definitely the potential to be bigger, but as far as... Wowza. As far as being able to have a good location, accessible location, I'm pretty much limited to the size of my venue. And I'm perfectly fine to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming today and drinking with us.
Big friend of the podcast. Who are you and who are you with? Because it's not like you haven't been on this podcast before.
I'm sorry. My name is Albert. I am part of Bread and Beer Buds. I am the fermentation lab technician at FIU as well. I am an all-around bread maker and beer maker.
So one of the things that I've noticed as I've talked to a lot of the homebrewers here is how important education is. Some people are taking classes online. Some people are doing Master Brewer Academy down in Miami. Some people are obviously FIU graduates. How much has the homebrewing community really embraced education when it comes to finding out how to make a good product?
So first off, shout out to every single one of those. Todd Space with the Beer Academy, Dr. Gump at FIU. Allow me to say that a lot of these brewers are doing very outlandish experimental brews that involves a lot of history knowledge and a lot of just overall knowledge on how to make beer. And when somebody says that they're making this style or they're making this beer that has little tweaks, you have to understand that a lot of these tweaks involves you understanding how it's different from the norm. So then you start to learn that without the knowledge on the baseline, it really affects whether or not people are going to be impressed or understand the differences. And honestly, we do a lot of education here at the tables because it's not widespread and honestly known.
It's interesting because you are not the first person that I've asked in terms of the styles that are here, especially with the homebrewers. And when I asked what is sort of the big trend, the word that I've heard is experimental. And it seems like they are allowed to do more than somebody like La Tropicale or Magic 13, they're sort of dialed in, whereas these people can go kind of crazy.
Yeah. So a big part of it is one, budget, because you'll have people like La Tropical. They have an all oats beer. That is insane. Literally no barley grain. Technically by Bavarian law, not a beer, but it is amazing. It's very interesting, but you need to introduce a lot of different enzymes to break down those starches because oats don't bring those enzymes the way barley grain does. So then you have to do a lot of stages of introducing enzymes to break it down. Without people knowing that, how are you going to catch their attention into what is different about this beer? And that's why I give them full respect. Matt Weintraub, he is a mad scientist. I love him. He truly went down and found out the difference between the beer he wanted to just play with and say, I want to try this, versus the beers that are already out in the market. And without that knowledge, people are not going to either be impressed or really grab their attention.
I almost hate to say this, but it seems like supply chain is also a big issue because, sometimes hops aren't available. Sometimes malt isn't available because the industry. Do you think that is going to hurt home brewing, or do you think that they're going to find the weird ways around and all of a sudden create the next big thing?
I mean, I don't want to say anything wrong and say, hey, while we're hurting, we will survive. Survival is always going to be a big key part of our experimentation, creativity, whether or not we're going to make it, whether or not we're going to make something that is absolutely absurdly different. But we would rather not suffer for those X amount of times when something's not available. So I can't say yes or no to that just because, yeah, people are going to be creative, but for the ones that aren't creative and they need to rely on these ingredients, they are going to suffer more than everyone else. And it's not a lack of creativity. It's more of just a eureka moment. And you cannot write that into everyone's business because that's not a thing you can factor in. It's just not.
Awesome. I guess taking a look at what you've tried today in terms of home brewers, do you think that the future of home brewing here in South Florida is strong? Are you seeing some good people that you're kind of waiting to see open up and really sort of change the face of brewing here in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties?
I mean, besides myself, because I'm going to be my ego in here. Besides myself and my buddy Alex, we are starting up Bread and Beer Buds, and we are very focused on experimental outward beers, like our gruits. We have a jasmine tea gruit, a chamomile tea gruit. Yeah, a lot of people have been really talking about our gruits tonight. I've been really happy about it. I feel a lot of support from the community. But again, it's all about how the community, how the era, the age that you're in. Some people are very receptive to what you're going to do different. Some people are not. I don't want to speak for every brewery. I don't want to speak for every beer drinker, but I'm really happy with how Miami is diving into what's new. Just like, honestly, the rest of America. America is known as the new world of beer, whereas the rest of the world, they're doing a little bit here and there, but they're known as the old world. And we are doing our best to really experiment and dive into what's already been done and perfecting it. No offense to those who've perfected it before. And some people are really looking into but what if? And that what if question is so beautiful and open-ended, and I can't help but support it. If you want to do an all XYZ beer that's very different from everyone else's, hey man, I'm going to drink yours, I'm going to give you my opinion, and I'm going to dive in for the next time you tweak it a little bit and try to make it towards maybe something you like or maybe something I don't like or I do like. I don't know, but I'm here for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and I cannot wait to see you again at North Miami Brewfest.
Dude, thank you, man, and I can't wait to see you guys again, too.
Awesome. Both great guys, and it's always great to talk to them, especially Albert. Albert's just an amazing human being. But let's talk to some homebrewers. And there were several homebrewers that were there that day of varying size, which is cool. You can definitely see some people are putting a lot of resources into some people are just getting started. It's always kind of neat to come to events like this to see what the homebrewing community is doing and kind of where they're going. What are they looking at making? And so here are the people that you're going to be listening to. And you can find all of their information on social media. We're going to try and put as many links as we can in our show notes. I recommend that you go try to find all of these brewers and see where the next festival is where they're going to be pouring. Our first interview is actually going to be Rudy Delgado from Rocketeer Beer. What's funny about them is that you're not going to be seeing them at festivals as homebrewers too much more, because they have just signed a lease on a new location. I do believe it is, I mean, it's definitely south of Miami. We're going to get Rocketeer Beer on here once they open. We have to, because they literally named one of their beers after me. And excellent as it is. If you have been reading the Florida Beer blog at floridabeerblog.com, you will see a beer that they brewed with Hop-Sized Brewing, a brewery out in Bonita Springs that we have had on the podcast before. And actually, what's funny is Hop-Sized Brewing just got the Best Small Brewery at Best Florida Beer in 2023. And they were there with a canned collaboration called Hazy Collisions, which is not only perfectly right down the line with both of those breweries, but a great collaboration between two breweries whose brewmasters are brothers-in-law because their wives are sisters. I thought that was kind of funny, and it wasn't until this event that I found that out. Okay, enough talking about Rudy. So Rudy Delgado from Rocketeer Beer. Now we're going to be talking with Juan Salas from Cinta Verde Brewing, John Gallarte from Little Brewing Company, Herman Fuenmayor from Dancy Calavera Brewing Company. And that was a blast. I love that aesthetic, and the beers are phenomenal. And then we finish up with David Carrion from Bonita Beach Brewing, who actually had just won the homebrewing competition. So our interview with David was with the homebrewing trophy sitting on the top of his tap box. So once again, we're going to be chatting with Rudy Delgado from Rocketeer Beer, Juan Salas from Cinta Verde Brewing, John Gallarte from Little Brewing Company, Herman Fuenmayor from Dancing Calavera Brewing Company, and David Carrion from Bonita Beach Brewing. Your name and who you're with.
Rudy Delgado, and I am with Rocketeer Beer.
So with home brewing as, I guess, a sport nowadays, has it gotten easier or more difficult in terms of sourcing ingredients and sourcing recipes that you wanted to try?
So I will say that locally it has become a little bit more difficult. We have found where other homebrewers have bought up all the stock of something we may particularly want. So we have found ourselves struggling to source certain things that we need.
And does that sort of focus on how you create recipes more based on what you can find versus what you want and kind of going from there?
So when it comes to recipes, we basically try to just do with what we have. So whether it be adjusting something at last minute or a recipe where, for example, we may have not found the certain wheat that we like, picking another wheat instead, and then just focusing around that. That's basically what we've been doing.
And you finally achieved the dream of all homebrewers, and that you got the keys to your own location. How long did that process take?
So just finding the location has really taken us about, I'm not gonna lie, it's been about 2 years, and then 1 year finding a location and about a year in negotiations. But we are at a place where, we sign contracts and we're good and we're happy with what we found.
What was the one mistake that you made that if you could go back in time a couple of years ago, you would change how you approached it?
Not asking our landlord for enough concessions.
And what do you mean?
So unfortunately, our space, for example, something we found out as we were building out, we need fire sprinklers, and fire sprinklers are very expensive. So we asked for an amount thinking that's what it would cost, and it literally is costing twice as much. So I wish I would have asked for twice as much.
That's amazing. And so what did you bring here, I guess, with the beers that you have and festivals that you've gone to? How important is the festival circuit in getting information and dialing in the recipes that you eventually will use when you open your space to the public?
So I think that going to these festivals is really nice because we can get feedback from the public. And in these more personal festivals like SFL Hops, we really get a lot of good feedback from real beer drinkers and not just people who just, I'm just here. And talking to the other brewers, understanding the mistakes they've come through and what they've done that didn't necessarily work out, I think really gives us a vehicle to jump off and say, hey, okay, let's try this instead.
Awesome. Thank you.
Enjoy. Thanks.
Can you give me your name and who you are with?
My name is Juan Salas, and I'm the home brewer for Cinta Verde Brewing.
When jumping into the homebrew, experience, it's a little bit different brewing beers at home and then brewing beers to come to a festival like this. How long did it take you to dial in your recipes to where you wanted to say, okay, let's go ahead and show people that aren't our friends and family?
So fortunately, both of the recipes that I brought here were already tried before, and people loved it. So I knew that's what I wanted to come with over here, something that people were really going to love. The hazy IPA that I made is an award-winning beer that we won a Lauderdale competition last year. And then the other one, the Vienna Lager, among my friends, everybody loved it. So I knew that's something that I wanted to bring over here for people to try it out. So the recipes was the easy part. The lager takes about 30 to 40 days to be ready. And then the hazy was about 15 to 20.
And this isn't exactly cheap for somebody like you in terms of getting the ingredients and the time and everything. What point did you finally say, okay, let's go ahead and do it. Let's try to push through and let's kind of take the next step?
Damn. So I just got into homebrewing last year. Did a course with Miami Master Brewers Academy down in Miami, and that did it for me. Once I took that course and I learned everything about it, I knew that's what I wanted to start trying out at home. My system is pretty small, so it's not that expensive yet. I'm doing 5-gallon batches, so it's still affordable for now.
Do you think that with the information and the buzz that you've gotten today, that this will be something that you will try to ramp up in the future?
I would love to. That's the goal. That's always the goal. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the investment, the money, and it's pretty up there. So we're hoping for that, but that's the goal.
With today's event, have you gotten a lot of good information that you may go back and either do more recipes or dial in the ones that you have, even though they've won awards?
Right. Recipe-wise, positive feedback all around. When it comes to the investment and opening my own place, I spoke to the guys from Rocketeer, and they just opened. Well, they're hoping to open their own place next year. They already got all the numbers down, and I got an estimate of what they got, and it's pretty up there. So I know what I have to work for.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, John Gallarte. I'm owner brewer of Little Brewing Company.
And with this, it's kind of interesting that you have a slight leg up from the other brewers that you have here in that you were able to connect with a couple of contract brewers in the state of Florida to sort of produce your beers. What is the process of that like, going to somebody and saying, hey, I'm a home brewer, let's get my stuff out there?
It takes a long time. I had a beer house in Little Havana for 5 years called Aducos, and over just selling beers and meeting brewers and home brewing, I was able to kind of finally get a little bit of a networking going. And so what happened is towards the ends of our beer house time, we had talked to Prison Pals who was kind enough, and they allowed us to do our first beer. And from there, we were able to kind of move forward. So it's a long process that you invest in craft beer, and then you go and you find who can really help you hold the quality as much as you can. It's tricky.
How, I guess, which is more advantageous to getting the name of Little Brewing Company out there? Going to festivals such as this one and just sampling, or getting your product in a can and on a shelf or at a brewery for people to take home?
They're tied together so much because, when you're a contract brewer, you're brewing such big batches. So you can't be as agile as you wanted to be as a home brewer. You have to really focus on a style that you think that's going to hit a home run. Might be your first batch, but you shoot for the stars. And so it's actually a little bit more, they're so tied together because you have to move the beer that you love through this it's a channel that's not as open as if you had your tap room. So there's more money in a tap room. And as the other one, you're really just trying to get ready for the tap room. You're building up so that people know who you are and kind of know your style. I think that's really what we're trying to do.
when you have something that's canned, such as Sundowner IPA that you have with, is it still something where you can come to an event like this, hear the feedback, and then go back and dial in the recipe a little bit more? Or are you pretty well set, this is what Sundowner is going to be for the rest of time?
You're always changing, listening to the feedback. We want to know those things. For example, we did this beer as a collab with Mendez Fuel. And he had asked us, he had goals for what the beer wanted to be. And then, so we tried to match that. So this one in particular, we wanted 6.2. It ended at 6.6. So that sweetness changed the style of the beer a little bit. So overall, you listen to it. We know with this one, we want to pull back on the caramel a little bit and showcase the hops a little bit more early and maybe a longer boil. But that's what it is by all means. The label will say the same, but most likely we're always trying to change to see, we're hitting the style.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Okay, so what's your name and who do you represent?
My name is Herman. I'm the founder and brewer from Dancing Calavera Brewing Company.
Now, what I find interesting, especially with some of the home brewers here, is they come with a iconography, with an image already set and ready to go. For you, which really came first? Was it the beers or was it the Dancing Calavera sort of image and idea?
It's kind of like a perfect storm. I'm always been a beer drinker, but also I like to host people, my house. Like, come here, I want to cook for you. Even I'm not a chef. I like to host people. And I like the bar culture, being a Mo from The Simpsons. You go to the place, you know the bartender. The bartender knows you. And I'm from Venezuela. Latin America, we are familiar. We kind of like a lager, light beers. Happened to me, I moved to California in 2011 when all this craft beer movement was blooming. That's when I understand about the IPAs and stouts and different kind of beers. And the culture of the breweries, which is not a bar. It's a place for gathering, to bring your family, to bring your dogs, pet-friendly stuff. I got into, and I was like, this is the life I want to live. Pandemic 2020 came. Instead of cutting my hair myself, I started brewing. Because it's now or never. I got some pans and pots, make my first batch. Horrible. I mean, my friends brave enough to try it and approved it. And from there, I pick it up. I start doing stuff. And my real job, 9 to 5 job, is I'm a videographer. I'm a photographer. I'm familiar with storytelling. So when I think of a beer, before even brew the beer, it's I got reference, cultural reference, colors, moments, stuff. And I get a name for the beer. After I have a name, how this beer should look and taste.
It's interesting because it sounds like you're trying to tell the story through the beer. And a lot of people will, here's a beer, let me slap a name onto it. But with each of these, the beer has to accentuate the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, I have the Hull Over Ale. The Hull Over, if you're not from Miami, Hull Over Beach is a nude beach. You can tell the naked girls over here.
And the sign that says nude beach, which is kind of funny. And a lot of people may not know Hull Over Beach, but yeah.
This is a golden ale with hibiscus and passion fruit, tropical, floral, citrus beer. It's a beer that you should be drinking when you're butt naked on the beach. Right? Also, they have the High Tide. It's a blonde ale. Name come from the Blondie song. The tide is high, but I'm moving on. And the Eclipse is a black IPA. So black, nighttime, stronger, hoppier character. Not a stout, not a porter. But you're getting there. And the brand itself is Dancing Calavera. Calavera in Spanish means skull. And my leitmotif is a calavera have no race, have no religion. It's just bonds smiling and dancing. You dance, you smile, you have a good time. Everyone is welcome here. And that's what it came from. And this is because my musical background is like a punk rock, ska, new wave-ish stuff. So it's like a perfect storm of my cultural reference, my values, the way I think. That's how I make it.
It seems like you've got a lot of influences that are coming together because obviously you've got Venezuelan, you've got the Californian sort of beer style, and I would almost venture to say that the California beer scene and the South Florida beer scene are two very different things. And even like the difference between a Broward County beer scene and a Miami-Dade beer scene are very different as well. Do you try to focus on pleasing one particular group, or are you really just focusing on kind of being true to who you are and kind of going from there?
I mean, to be honest, I brew some beers that are not particularly my jam. I'm a sucker for hoppy IPA beers, but we're in Miami. A lot of Latin American people here likes lagers, blonde ales, like yellowish soft beer. I brew that for them because, after all, that's the people who's gonna come to my brewery. Also, I do the beers that I like to brew, like a black IPA, which is like a 7% alcohol with like a humongous amount of hops. For aroma, it's not a porter, it's not a stout, it's a black IPA, but we have both. And I'm kind of like a proud of my core product. Is this golden ale with hibiscus and passion fruit, the whole hour ale, which is like the beer for the heat and humidity of Miami. The beer that you would like to drink in a beach Sunday.
That's amazing. Because I've seen you in the South Florida craft beer sort of circuit. What is going to be next for you? What are you really trying to focus on in terms of styles and next steps?
I mean, it's a huge, never-ending learning path. Because, I mean, I'm a home brewer, humble. I know the limitation as a home brewer you have, but you work both sides. Focus, starting, preparing on your product because you want a pristine A+ product. But at the same time, there's a lot of marketing, visual image. That's what we're doing right now. Our goals about to have a tap room, I know it's gonna be for later. For now, what we're gonna do is like be on festivals, share the word, share the love, vibe with the people, with another brewers, either home brewers or craft brewers, because I love this industry in the way like there's no hate, it's a super healthy competition. We learn from each other, we help each other. Because when I win, everyone wins. When they win, I win too. So our focus right now is like be present on festivals. I want to put my skull all over the place. And finally get our tap room more than distribution. I want the people to come with me. I want people to like, I know you, I know your name, I know what you like to drink. And I got what you want.
Awesome. I definitely can't wait for that to happen. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure to be here, man.
So what's your name and who are you with?
My name's David Carrion. I'm with Bonita Beach Brewing.
First and foremost, you won People's Choice. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. First homebrew competition, and I'm taking home the gold, so pretty awesome.
Well, I was going to say, because with Bonita Beach, Bonita Springs has all of a sudden like exploded. You know, obviously momentum was there. Momentum became the new home of Riptide, or the second home. But all of a sudden now you've got Ceremony, you've got Hop Size, Chubby Mermaid is coming. Where did all this craft beer in Bonita Springs come from?
I think it's a great community of people that are brewing great beer. I used to speak with Brian all the time at Momentum, he really got me into the craft beer scene. And Darlin over at Hopsize Brewing has really taken me under his wing and shown me a ton of stuff. And yeah, I started brewing in September of 2022, and it's been a hell of a ride, and it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. I would say it seems like a common theme with a lot of home brewers that really want to push big is to find a person that has already opened up their location and kind of get under their wing and sort of learn from them.
Yeah, I can't speak for anyone else. All I can say is that Darlin over at Hopsize Brewing has shown me a lot. Same with Trip, their main brewer. And I've gotten a lot of tips, and I've tried a lot of cool stuff, and somehow I came out on top, and I'm super excited.
Now, the big difficulty is in terms of a crowded field, because we're here with a lot of home brewers, and Bonita Beach and the whole Lee County, Collier County kind of area is really starting to explode. How do you differentiate you from everybody else to where people don't just come up and say, oh, Bonita Beach, yeah, I've been to Riptide. Your stuff is like Riptide.
I try to stick to traditional recipes, played around with a couple different things.
Do you have, even though you won, did you get a lot of information today where you'll probably go back and start working on some other recipes or fine-tuning the recipes that you have?
I got a lot of great feedback. One thing that people were really asking for here in the East Coast was for a sour, and I didn't bring a sour. So it's something that I'm working on. I have a couple recipes up my sleeve, and next time I come here, I will definitely have a sour.
Interesting. So sours seem to be more of an East Coast than a West Coast sort of a thing here in Florida?
I think that this is the new New England IPA.
That's fantastic. And with the beers that you brought, obviously, we've got two different Cuban lagers. The second one with lemon drop, I'm massively, massively enjoying. Do you think that it will have an effect on what you're bringing and what you're brewing, depending on where you are? So if you were to go to Best Florida Beer up in Tampa, that would create different recipes that you would need to bring over something like this event or something that you would brew over at like Bonita Springs Brew Fest.
I guess it depends on the judging. People's choice. I mean, every area has a specific type of beer that they like. I try to stick to more traditional beers, more true to style beers. Obviously, I could have a fancy stout up my sleeve or a sour up my sleeve for a specific area, but time will tell.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. So I wanted to get a little bit of color for the event as well, and there are a couple people that I wanted to chat with, and so I'm going to have them kind of come on the show next. The first is going to be Louis Cotto. He is the person behind Beard, Brews, and Food, which is one of the most interesting craft beer Instagram accounts that I have seen. And he is 1/3 of Beer Pressure, the podcast, which they define as sort of a digital bottle share. So if you really want to have a couple people hang around, drink some beers, and just chat, if that's your kind of thing, you just enjoy having a good old time, definitely check out Beer Pressure, the podcast. He likes to say he's the best podcast of beer in Florida. I know who you're listening to right now. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to dust the dirt off my shoulder and we'll move on. But Louis is a phenomenal guy. Definitely check out both of those accounts and check out the podcast. And we're going to chat with him about his views at the festival and for homebrewing at large. And the last interview that I have for you, last but definitely not least, is Adrian Zamudio from Tiny Mallet Designs. If you are familiar with the South Florida craft fair scene, or you have been to some other beer festivals, you have seen the wooden beer steins, and they are made out of a single piece of wood that he hand carves himself. This is something that I received as a gift for Father's Day a couple of years ago. It is one of my favorite beer drinking vessels of all time, and I definitely had to get Adrian on there. Definitely check out the show notes so you can see his shop. You can purchase right there on the website. Trust me, you're going to like it, especially after you listen to him. So Louis Cotto from Beer, Brews, and Food and Beer Pressure, the podcast, and Adrian Zamudio from Tiny Mallet Designs. So what's your name, and what's the name of the second best Florida beer podcast that you have in the state of Florida?
So my name is Luis Cotto, Beer, Brews, and Food. And the number one beer podcast right now is Beer Pressure, the podcast. No homie left sober.
Unfortunately, that is incorrect. But so we've got a beer festival going on. We've got a lot of homebrewers going on. What do you think, after trying a lot of these beers, how would you say the status of South Florida homebrewing is?
Oh, man, it's fantastic. I mean, like, it's like one of the best spots out of so many states right now to, like, enjoy, like, a homebrew that's on the caliber of production, in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like, every one of these homebrewers are ready to, like, make it to the next level where they could, like, open up their own business.
Are you seeing a lot of trends in homebrewing, especially with the people that are here right now? Are there any beers that are surprising you that they've been around?
The trend is experimental. Like there's this 110. I completely forgot their homebrew name, but it's all tea. It's all tea, and it's phenomenal. Phenomenal beers coming out of them.
That's kind of amazing. Do you see homebrewing starting to die down a little bit as the craft beer industry tends to enter a period of stasis a little bit, or do you think that's going to increase the amount of craft beer and brewer, like home brewers and experimentation?
No, it's going to increase because you need the home brewers to figure out their ways. After that, they'll bring in their production line from that.
Awesome. So give us a little bit of insight about your podcast, which obviously is not our podcast, a little bit different, not going to lie, but tell us about yours.
So we're audio bottle share. Sorry for the miscues on the language because I had quite a few. But it's audio bottle share, and what we do is we all bring in a beer to share. Sometimes it's a beer that the other person doesn't like too much, and we just like take a couple of sips, see what we think about it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
What's your name and who are you from?
My name's Adrian Zamudio, and I'm from the Tiny Mallet. I make wooden beer steins out of reclaimed wood.
I'm going to be honest with you. This was my Father's Day present last year. It is my favorite drinkware of all time. How did you get started on such an interesting idea?
So it all started with the inspiration from my wife. She said, you can't just give these fucking groomsmen bow ties and socks. You got to make them something legit and something epic for your bachelor party to present them as a groomsman for our wedding. I was like, you know what? You're right. You're completely right. You're always right, because the wife's always right at the end of the day.
You are absolutely correct on that.
That's how it goes. So a couple months went by. I said, you know what? I'm going to make them some wooden beer steins. I made them the first 5. They loved it. We went up to the Appalachian Mountains, and they freaked out. I gave them to them as a gift for my groomsmen. They were completely flabbergasted. They loved it every second of the day. We drank all day for the whole week that we were there. We went on the kayaks. We went up the mountain. We were camping. We were grilling. Everybody who we met up with, everybody who saw us with it, wanted it. The one post that we did on social media got so many hits. Everybody was asking me where, what, when, how. I want one right now. Went back to my wife, told her, you know what? There's a lot of orders. What should we do? She said, let's start the company. And there it went.
That's amazing. How long does it take you to make a particular, I guess, goblet or stein out of wood?
So what we do is we take an order between a minimum of 10 to 30 mugs. So any week I can do between 20 to 50 mugs, and I just hash them out. You know, we make them, we make it out of reclaimed wood. We make 20 to 50 mugs depending on the order. It could be 10 mugs. It could be 0 mugs for the week, but we make it happen. So every other week I'm making between 20 and 50 mugs.
And How do you find the wood? Because obviously wood itself is definitely not cheap anymore, especially after the pandemic, but you're using reclaimed wood. So how do you find the source material?
So we started with reclaimed wood and bought wood, but we found that there was so much reclaimed wood that can be found and sold and made and procured and asked for. So we go to different like construction sites, abandoned houses, anybody who's getting rid of wood that's the quality and the size that we need. We'll go, we'll ask, we'll introduce ourselves, we'll tell them what we do, and we'll go from there. You know, they give us either 2 pieces, 5 pieces, 20 pieces, 30 pieces, 1 piece. And, you know, we have a story to tell for each piece that we have because each piece is unique, as is unique to the place that we picked it up from.
And with the piece that's unique, obviously, because every one is different, is it difficult to sort of sell online and to show the different wares that you have?
So it's not difficult to sell online because most of the people who have come to the events like you guys, like SFL Hops and other events that we've showed our product at, they know what we have, they know what it is, they know the size, the shape, the size, the feeling. They've held it in their hands and they know exactly what they want. So either they buy it at the event or they buy it online. It's all the same because they're getting the same product with the same quality and they're getting it in their hand as fast as possible.
Obviously, you know, with the rain, hopefully sales were good for you. If not, how can people find your stuff online and purchase online?
So we're on tinymallet.com, thetinymalletdesign.com. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and pew, 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 pew. Rocketeer. I love that you got actually the gun from there. This is amazing. You guys are true beer drinkers, and I'm glad that you have our product in your hands right now today. Thank you, family. Peace and love. Till the next time, we'll cheers next time with your mug in hand. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Nothing like getting attacked with a gothic ray gun.
And that's all we love. That's what we go for, is to have product in hand, to have people come by, shout us out, love our product, be so passionate that they want to talk on the mic, talk to us in person. And that's what it's all about, is having a genuine connection with the beer community, beer aficionados, and having mugs in hand.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
So there we have it, the SFL Hops Beer Fest 2023, and a nice discussion into the current nature of homebrewing. Definitely hope you enjoyed it. It was an absolute blast. There were a lot of people at that event. Could not speak to everybody, which makes me sad, but unfortunately, there was a lot to try and a lot to do. So next week, we're going to start going north. We're heading north of Orlando for a couple episodes, and I think you're going to enjoy them. But the first episode we're going to have next week is going to be in horse country. So if you know anything about North Central Florida, you know exactly what city we're going to. Make sure to follow us on social media. We are at Florida Beer Podcast on Threads, Instagram, and X. And hopefully, if you're listening to this episode years into the future, those brand names have stayed. Facebook probably isn't going to be going anywhere, and we're at FL Beer Blog on Facebook. We are on the internet at floridabeerblog.com and floridabeerpodcast.com. And when you go to floridabeerpodcast.com, you will see that we are a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network, a collective of some of the best podcasts here in the state of Florida, and you can find more information about them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. You want to drop us a line, you got some ideas, some feedback, anything that you want to, you can reach us at floridabeerblog@gmail.com. If you are listening to us on a podcasting app, thank you so much. Make sure to like us and subscribe and try to leave a nice 5-star review. It really does help get the word out to everybody. We will be back in horse country next week with another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. This is David Butler, your host and author. And don't forget to drink Florida craft. Maybe drink Florida homebrew.